Hey everyone, I'm Jay.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Scott, and welcome to Witches Betwixt.
Today's topic, we're going to be talking about death and despair. I'm just kidding. No, we're going to be talking about death and the inevitability of it, and a lot of other things surrounding it. But before we get into that very large topic to unpack, I kind of just want to just say hi to everyone. I feel like we've just been, I don't know, floating around in our own personal voids.
I think it
lately.
feels like for you a while since we've done this and had all three of us together in the room at once, you know?
Yeah, it really has been a
Yeah.
while for the three of us to get together and record, because the past couple weeks I do what I normally do at this time of year, and I go kind of radio silent for a couple weeks, and I solely focus on Pagan Pride Day, because I'm the president of Philadelphia Pagan Pride, our chapter of it, and we did a virtual event this year, and it took all of my attention and strength and energy. And it's really funny because you wouldn't think that, like, you would think like, oh, you get to run a virtual event from your house in your pajamas, basically, like I don't even have to wear pants, and it should be cake, right? And it was not cake. It was the opposite of cake. Like we executed it. It went well. It went, the show did go on, but it was a fucking production. It was stressful. I was saying to Joyce the whole time, I was like, I would rather be sweating my fucking balls off, like setting up tents and getting dirty, and you know what I mean, and running around the park and doing all that crazy stuff that I do. I'd almost, appreciate the goddamn protesters that show up. Just, I don't know. I was very, very, very much out of my comfort zone doing a virtual, well, not out of my comfort zone. I've done virtual things before. I've dabbled with streaming and, this podcast and stuff like that. So I had the knowledge to do it, but that's it's a lot to be on for 11 hours straight. It's a lot to be completely live, but we did it successfully, and I'm really happy about it. I'll share some links in the future once I get the live stream spliced up, if anyone's interested in seeing certain parts of it. But so yeah, that's why it feels like forever since we got together, because me and Sophia did a couple. We had our interview. We did an interview with Ursa, which will be coming out at some point. I don't know the order that these episodes are going to be released. Yeah, things have just been all over the place. And we're still in quarantine, and that's unsettling, and COVID's still a thing, and the world is still weird, and everything is still crazy, and it just feels...
It almost feels like it's getting, like, I mean, I know that it's not, it just feels like it's getting crazier.
Crazier,
now
It is.
and yet normal.
It is. Of course it is. Like the world's not going back to the way it was. And I think that's what is kind of happening right now, is why this autumn feels so weird for everybody. And everybody just keeps hoping, haha, like, I can't wait for this year to be over and 2021 to happen, as if that's going to magically make things better.
Which, of course,
Right?
it won't.
Yeah, like, there's no running from the problems of society and the world that we're creating for ourselves. We really need to address them head on. And everybody in the world is so dedicated at pushing the problem onto a later date, and it's like, man, it doesn't work that way,
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much focus on, 2021, like suddenly it's gonna be, December 31st at midnight, and suddenly everything's gonna be better. And that's not
like homelessness or COVID or starvation or or capitalism, the hollowness of it go away, Sorry, I'm just ranting right now.
It wouldn't be a Witches Betwixt episode if we didn't shit on capitalism at least once.
It's just such a hollow existence, I think that's part of, like, Scott and I were talking about feeling anxious earlier on today. That's what it comes down to, is like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, my CERB money is nearly at the end. I'm in a new place, so I'm gonna have to pay for it soon. I need to find a job, and it's like that gut feeling of like, I don't want to have to chain myself to this stupid fucking system that breaks me down and dehumanizes me in exchange for money. And it's not even a good exchange anymore. It's like every single thing that I do in it is a problem. Like if I go and do construction work, I'm suddenly putting in a high rise, and that's like destroying the land. And if I'm working retail, I'm helping people buy this shit that just clogs up landfills that they don't need. It's like you are selling your body in complicitness for this wage that you get for participation in society, but that's what's fucking killing us, right? So like, how do you have more of that be the answer or be the solution when we're already collectively at a point where we're fucked from it, right?
Right, and also like the job opportunities.
Sorry to just like dump the heaviest energy onto the episode from the get-go, but like that's what it is.
Honestly, Sophia, I was kind of in a way in the same boat a little bit, a couple months ago. Like my unemployment was running out. I didn't have a job to go back to. Like a lot of people were collecting unemployment, but they were just like in anticipation of getting recalled to their jobs that they had.
Yeah.
And like my previous boss like sold the company, and all this like fucking drama shit went down, and so I didn't have a job to go back to, and I had hit the end of that bonus $600 a week that they were doing, and I was like, all right, well now I'm just back to regular unemployment. I'm like, I'd rather I still have like 13 weeks that I could collect. God forbid something happened with this job, I could still collect for the rest of I could collect for another 13 weeks. I was like, yeah, I need to find a job now. And I was like, I have no fucking like, who's even hiring? Who's hiring in the middle of a goddamn pandemic? What could I possibly do? And I'm fortunate that I found something. The company is decent where I ended up. It's actually pretty chill in the fact that they don't really care much about you unless you do your like. They just like, look, we don't care what shift you work. Just put in your 8 hours, do your job, and we'll see you Monday through Friday. And honestly, like that's really just kind of that's cool with me. I'm in, and it's it's office work. I'm a paralegal now. I write lawsuits. That's what I do. I write lawsuits for a personal injury firm. So it's really like I don't love it. You know what I mean? It's not amazing. It's not like what fulfills me, but it pays my bills, and they're relatively chill about it, so I really can't complain. But there's plenty of people who are not as fortunate as me, and I can only I don't know what the job market looks like in your area right now, Sophia. I'm not really sure. Like, what are the prospects?
It isn't even a job. It's my spirit. What can I keep doing that doesn't degrade me anymore? Like I've had a lifetime of it. I'm not going to make this episode about myself, just literally before saying I don't want to go and like dump all my personal problems onto people in the void who like have nothing to do with me or know anything about me. But like,
to be fair,
a lot of people are like me who've had hard lives who don't. What the fuck's the answer? You just go back to the field, right?
Right.
Like, or do you go back to doing the job because that's where I'm sitting right now. Like, I'm never going to get ahead. I'm going to be stuck forever if I'm just doing warehouse work, and it's still complicit in the devils, like fucking of society. That's what I mean by the devil, right? And I could go do trade work, but that also is like destroys the land to put in a condo or a high rise or something,
Have you thought about like office or clerical work?
Yeah, but like for what? So that I can push papers for some corporation. Like, what does your job do, right? Like, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like, if I could stop caring, I'd be okay. That's my problem, is I care, right? I can't sell somebody some useless crap that I know that's not going to work for them. I can't like want to hurt somebody for a living. There's just no way I can do some shit like that. Like, I can't hurt the land. The fuck do I do, man? Like, this is like the artist's crux, or like the kind heart's crux, you know? Like, what do you do when you're in a world that's not built for you, right?
I actually, if I can interject, I actually know exactly what you're talking about, Sophia. I mean, I talk about my future goals a lot, which I'm not technically supposed to, according to my therapist, but like I think about, my future as a clinician and how much it upsets me because I have to think about how much money sessions are for a therapist and how hard it is for common folk, even like myself, who without state insurance, I wouldn't be able to see my therapist. And I often think about, how do I make my therapy accessible to everyone? Well, making sure I have sliding scale, making sure that when I think about these things, I'm making sure that I spend time at a clinic, you know, maybe every other weekend, Saturday and Sunday until me and my partner decide to have children. And then, then it'll probably be every other Saturday or Sunday, and I think about that even now, but I get exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
you're forced to feed a machine, but I mean, now of course it's a bit different,
And
right? Like
even
I'm
then,
not
it's like,
raping the
what?
earth. I'm not, I wouldn't be doing any of that. Like I would actively be trying to heal people. But the thing is that if that healing can't come with, you know, if that healing can't get to everyone, then it's not healing anymore.
I
And
guess, and I really feel that too. Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing. Like, I want to heal people. Like, I want an education. I want my master's degree. I want to be, I want to be a clinician. But how do I make that to where I can go out and, maybe work with, homeless people who were forced out thanks to who was it? At least here in the States. Was it
Oh
Reagan?
man.
Um,
Yeah,
when
dealing with
he
homeless people is hard. I'm gonna tell you this as someone who's
but
like
I mean,
experienced a bit of homelessness.
it's
There's
just,
so much pain involved in it, you
but
know?
that's
How
fine. Like,
much
I don't like I don't mind the gore of the mind. See, like it does like and I would love to see like that doesn't hurt me because I believe that like any step forward, any sort of outreach is good as long as it's, in the right place, I guess. I'm trying to just eloquently state my words. I'm feeling a little anxious tonight just for the viewers in case you're like picking up on a nervous energy, but no, what I'm trying to say is I get what you're saying, Sophia. I really do.
yeah.
Like
And like that comes back to the whole like death motto for the episode. Like, you think that what we're gonna sit down and talk about death being all right, how do we prepare for dying? Like, no, death is this what we're doing right now. This venting, this releasing of like, fuck, I don't even want to have to deal with it anymore, you know? And just like, you'd think that death would be a letting go, you know? It would be like, finally we get to stop and rest, but like then society comes back in to grab its greedy fucking tendrils from you, because not even death can be free. They have to take my body and usher it away from my family and make my family pay tens of thousands of dollars to have a funeral just to put me in the ground. Why
mhm.
can't I even pass on without guilt?
They even made like natural burials incredibly difficult to have. In Pennsylvania, there is, or I don't even know if it's in Pennsylvania. Closest to me and Jay for a natural burial, like you pretty much it's you, either a burial like a cloth and the ground, or you can do like an old fashioned coffin, and the ground, and that's all. Basically, even that, like, there's only one, and the waiting list is like ridiculous.
The fact
And
that you need a waiting list to throw a body in the ground is absurd.
right, and it's kind of
How do
like
you
the
need a
same thing with
waiting list
like
to
eating.
die? Like,
It's kind of like
damn.
it's like the same thing with like how they've made like quote unquote going green. Like they made getting back to the earth expensive. Like, like, I mean, being witches, I mean, like, I think we can all agree, like, just witchcraft alone, like, the purchasing of herbs, even if it's not for herbal
Yeah.
medicine, just herbal magic, I mean, that stuff is expensive. Like,
It's the monstrous parasite of okay, so here's what I really think that we're going to get down to in the crux of like the death episode is like you expect death to be this organic thing where you get to move back and go be a part of the earth, right? But the parasite of society refuses to let you actually be having this natural process, right? And they upset it from like your family not being able to be around you, like they have to pay just to have a funeral, like you have to prepare, and if you don't do all these things and have the money for them, then you're saddling them with like undue financial stress and guilt, and you can't even feel okay about dying.
mm-hmm.
Everything in our society from birth to death is shame, guilt, we need you, the parasite, right? Give me the monkey paw. Everything is still about me. Even after we've fucking died, it's about the parasite of society that won't just shut the fuck up and let us be. That's why I don't even like you mentioned having kids, and I'm like, who would want to bring kids into this monstrosity?
Adopt,
Not
by
to
the
like
way.
yeah, and not to like shit talk people who want to have kids, but this is always like the first thing that comes on my mind when I'm in the States, because like I'm gonna be really hard honest with all y'all. I'm somebody who like struggles to live, right? Like life is very, very hard, and I am not the type of person who's ever going to go and kill myself, right? But I have a huge amount that I struggle with this pain, and I have to literally just like sit with it every time and say, haha, no, right? And I choose not to do that, for a lot of good reasons. But at the end of the day, there's still like the guilt reason, of like society, of like every single bit of it, there's no real release, right? Like when does it finally end?
I think about that a lot. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, so I'll kind of I don't know if I've mentioned it explicitly on the podcast before, so I'll kind of like thinly veil it. But a friend of mine's dad passed, coming up on I think 3 years in this December. I was there with this close friend of mine, experienced it and everything, and I shit you not, the first thing out of my friend's mouth, before the funeral home, or the people that pick up the body, before they even got there, first thing out of their mouth was, "How are we gonna pay the bills?" Because their dad was the kind of like the sole provider of that household. And it just, the first thing out of their mouth was, how are we going to pay the bills? What are we going to do about money? And it was such a sobering situation. Like, they couldn't even grieve the passing of their father. They couldn't process anything else that happened in that moment other than, how are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to do this? And additionally, during that whole saga, so we initially had his body sent to one funeral home. They picked him up and whatnot, and they were going to charge us some exorbitant amount of money. It was like $3,000 for just a cremation, no service, no nothing, no fancy urn, just a box of ashes, no service. We went to even pick up the ashes, and they were going to charge us like $3,500 or $3,000. It was a stupid amount of money for just a cremation. And so we called another funeral home, and they said, "Oh, that's ridiculous, like they shouldn't be charging you that much," and they basically could do it for like about half price. And I was like, yeah, $1,500 sounds way more reasonable and logical for just a cremation with no service and just a box, So we ended up calling the funeral home in which the body was at, and we called and we said, hey, we're gonna have another funeral home come and pick him up and take him. We did say, hey, we're still gonna pay you for the pickup of the body. It was $200. Yeah, $200 just to pick up a body. Ridiculous. And we did say, we're gonna pay you the money. Thank you for picking up the body, but we're gonna use another funeral home. And that guy argued with us. He tried to haggle. He said, "Oh, I know where you're going. You're going to this funeral home, and they always undercut my prices and blah 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 blah." It turned into like a fucking haggling, fucking monstrosity. And my friend was like, "This is my father's body. Like, what the fuck? Like, what fucking right do you have? You know?" And it was just absolutely absurd that like this was happening to this degree. I still to this day cannot believe that I witnessed that whole thing go down the way it went down. It was completely ridiculous. But it just makes me think about, like how we've commodified everything. Everything has a price. Everything has a barcode, a tag, some sort of categorization. Everything has something. And so there's this game coming out. I don't know if maybe people in the gaming circle are pretty clued into it. Scott, I don't know if you've heard anything about it, but it's called Cyberpunk 2077.
I've been hearing it like on like I'm like part of like nerd groups in general, and they like sometimes they'll like in passing. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I know the queer community in particular is kind of split on this game. Some feel like it's going to be very transphobic, and some feel like it's not. But regardless of that, this game it's cyberpunk, so it's a dystopian future. Everything is run by some corporation, some mega corporation, whatever. And the more that I watch our society, I hate using the word evolve because it doesn't feel like we're evolving for a good reason, but I guess the more I watch our society evolve, I can't help but notice our society is sort of shifting toward, like that fantasy dystopian kind of thing that we write in books and movies and video games, right? Is happening now. Like, we're watching it happen now. This is like the beginning stages of it, and particularly in the US.
It ain't even in beginning stages.
No, it's definitely not in the beginning stages.
Fucking deeper on that one.
Yeah, we are pretty deep.
Wants to hear,
especially in the US, the fact that there's all this movement to privatize the postal service, which is I can't even begin to wrap my head around that. I can't. The fact that it's gonna go from 50, it could potentially go from 50 cents to mail a letter to $5 because it's whatever the hell they want to charge. Oh, you want to send?
It ain't even about the privatization, the money aspect. It's about the fact that it's so obviously corrupt that every single thing of the world's getting bought up by these people who already have everything, and they already have everything, and it's still not enough.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Not enough.
Yeah, they have all this, and that's what I'm saying about the control, right? So they would have enough control that they can make it cost $5 versus 50 cents when we've proven that you can mail a letter for 50 cents no problem. You know what I mean? It's the fact that they have.
It doesn't even.
No, that's what I'm saying is they have the power to do that. They could change it to $100 if they wanted, and no one can say anything because what choice do you have, right? Are you just not going to mail your letter?
No, I get you.
Yeah, and it really and that kind of thing really, really, really impacts trans people in particular, because I have been going the fuck through it with trying to get all my fucking documents in order just so I can file my goddamn taxes. And I finally was able to send I finally got my birth certificate, praise be, and I had to mail everything to the Social Security office, which means I had to literally order a new copy of my ID because they wanted all originals. So they really wanted me to send my actual identification card in the mail, and they send you back everything. But I'm like, but you're gonna hold on to my actual original shit?
What the?
And then mail it the fuck back to me?
What is that even?
Because normally, without COVID, you would go into the Social Security office in person, present your documents, blah, 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 blah. They print you a new card. Okay, fine, have a nice day. Get this, the Social Security office is in the building in which I work. And yet I had to fucking mail my shit to them. So thankfully, I'm in a position to where I had some extra money, so I was able to pay the $30 to get another copy of my ID, like an actual another physical card. And for some reason, the birth certificate people sent me 2 birth certificates, so I lucked out there, and I was able to send all my shit in. But, like, imagine people who don't have that extra money, right, that I do. And the fact that, it only cost me, I think, like $3 or something like that to mail all that stuff. I think I mailed it first class or whatever. I just wanted tracking on it to make sure it got there. But imagine, like, if that was $50. $20, $100. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's inhibiting so many people from just living their fucking life. And that can kill people. You know what I mean? Like, that can yeah, and it has, and it does, and it will.
I gotta stop you right there. Here's a real question. How close have either of you been to if like your own mortality and the confrontation of it?
My own mortality?
Like, have you really had like
a near-death experience?
I'm gonna be honest with you, like, yeah. When I was 5 years old, I had to like accept the fact that I was probably gonna die, right? So that kind of like,
yeah, because you were like sick as a kid, right? You were in the hospital a lot and stuff. Yeah.
So that kind of set me up for a really weird relationship with it, right? And then I've had so many near-death experiences as an adult and been so close to like wanting not to be here. I'll tell you this though, like you think like maybe I wouldn't want to see my loved ones go on without me and all those things. The truth is, like, you don't even know if you're going to, what the other side's going to be like. Like we can posit all of these things, like I hope I don't have to watch my loved ones and stay here. And there's so many people who will have like this knowledge of the other side, they claim. And I mean, like, as a witch, we exhibit that whole middle ground, right? And some people are really full of shit, and some people really do have some divine insight on this, right? And I'm the type of person who I can sit with other people as they're dying. It doesn't really upset me, right?
I can
but
too.
The process the process of like the loved one loss, that happens like prior to death, right? Because when you're going through the stages building up to let go of it, like, and I don't want to talk about an expert, like I have a monopoly on death or misfortune, right? I'm just well acquainted. That fear of like, oh, my loved ones that I'm going to miss, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think like that sense of self is what dies. You're not going to remember even to like.
So you mean like
they're not your loved ones? Like, oh god, I don't even know how to word this.
So you mean like when you die, like your individualism dies, and you kind of just be like you kind of.
There's this okay, so let me explain it. There's like a separation of the soul almost. Like we've talked about this, and I don't want to use the term soul or spirit because I don't claim to have any true knowledge of it, right? But it feels like memories or lived experiences. Those go to who's alive.
Well, yeah, I mean, you live on through the living.
Yeah. So
it kind of.
Speaking as somebody who's lost somebody recently, like my one of my mentors, you end up carrying them with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that memory of you that gets passed on to other people ends up like becoming your spark, and people you carry it with them. But the memories of like you, it seems like that goes on to everybody else, right?
Yes, so it's kind of like you live on through the memories of others, through the feelings of others, through the experience of others. You live on through those you left behind. And that idea I like a lot. It actually reminds me of one of the house sayings in Game of Thrones. I think it's the Greyjoys. They say, "What is dead may never die."
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. Like, well, you're what is dead may never die. You can't, like, there's no dying again. Like, you've done it. This is, you've achieved that. That's happened.
That seems kind of like, I don't know though. What is dead may never die seems like such a head-shakingly over-intellectualization of it, right? It seems like a shield that someone almost puts up so they don't have to feel the death of it, of anything,
Well, that
and they
is-
say, I'm already emotionally dead, so I can't die again, and it's
Well,
like, man, fuck off. I'll
that
show
is
show you that shit.
that is their whole thing. I will just say real quickly, like that in the Game of Thrones, I guess, mythos. So those particular people, they I believe they worship like the drowned god, and there's this whole like theme of death. Like it basically what is like they're ironborn. I think they actually go through this like baptismal thing where they almost drown everyone. So it's like what is dead may never die kind of thing. So that is kind of like their whole shtick. So yeah, I mean that might really be part of where the phrase comes from, but just what you were saying there just kind of made me think of it. You were just gonna say something, Scott?
No, I was just gonna say I think that's like perspective. You know what I mean? Like anyone can kind of take an idea. It actually reminded me a lot of the Havamal.
What's that?
It's a Nordic spiritual text.
Okay.
And it's actually on Sarah Leiter, my friend Sarah, my now passed on friend, who was on the committee for the first Pagan Pride Day. On her I guess remembrance card or what have you. This is a little excerpt from this passage of the Havamal, and I'll read it because it fits. Cattle die, kinsmen die, the self must also die. But one thing I ween that will never die, fair fame and she who has earned it. I believe they put she for her, but regardless, it doesn't matter the gender. The point is that what is remembered lives is what sounds like what you're both kind of trying to get at.
And just like life is a very individual experience, like no one experiences life the same way, right? Because we're all individual beings, and we all experience this thing called being alive in unique ways, right? So I think that it would be fair to say that we do not experience death in the same, like in a uniform way. I think we experience death in a unique, individualized way that's tailored to each of our experiences.
Oh, in Judaic mysticism, that's exactly what it is.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
There's this deep concept of the afterlife is kind of what you make it out to be. Like whatever you want it to be is your afterlife, if you will. I mean, that's a very simplified.
You know what I want?
It's a very simplified version, but
you don't actually want to know what I want.
Well, now you've intrigued me. Now I have to ask.
It's like, have you ever heard the saying, don't go into the light because light is a trap?
Yeah.
Yeah, where like the Archons convince you to come back to life and guilt you back into being a baby.
Oh, I've never
I don't
heard
know
of
if I've heard that one, but I have heard the light thing.
Yeah, what I want to do is die and then come back and have them be like, oh, you're not supposed to be here anymore, you're dead. And I'll be like, yeah, I did that, but I'm back now, and I'm not about to have any of this shit anymore in here that you've been doing with society going on. So the jig is up. What are we going to do about this? I've died, but I'm coming back now.
Like you.
And they're like, oh, well, we can't do this.
Wait, you ready? Ready? Like you unplugged yourself from the Matrix? Me and my Matrix metaphors.
Don't
I have to
go down that rabbit hole.
Follow the rabbit. The red pill.
Yes, I got a rabbit tattooed on my arm. Yeah, I know. I get it.
Oh, I love that movie so much.
At me.
I had to. It wouldn't be a Witches Betwixt episode if I also didn't mention the Matrix, which has been confirmed as a trans allegory story. So, whatever. Enjoy that.
I'm pretty sure the Matrix is a much bigger thing than even the Wachowskis understand what they're channeling at this point.
Probably, honestly, probably. It is.
If they think it's just if I'm gonna be really honest to you, if it's a trans allegory story from the Wachowskis, they have no fucking idea of the thing that they have channeled into a hyper sigil accidentally that has hijacked it, and like, oh my god, these science fiction writers have no idea what they keep invoking. Jesus, why do they do this? And then you do this, you come along and you write your stories about machine gods and reality and waking up, and then you leave the magicians to come along and clean up your fucking mess afterwards. Also, you can have a nice big coming out story about being trans and you're the one and everyone, it's centered around you, Neo. But then somebody's got to come and clean up this shit afterwards once you've written your story and it sells out like millions and millions of dollars of blockbusters, and you have your games and stuff, and you've inadvertently channeled a hyper sigil that's causing this reality to happen. Who cleans that up? Y'all have no idea how much magicians are constantly cleaning up after the realities that you're just discarding in your works of fiction, and have no idea that you're invoking into reality, man.
I can just kind of picture.
I'm tired of. I'm like, this is the death episode. I'm tired of like playing the mask of this shit with y'all. This is what magicians do constantly. We're waging wars against all the things that people are invoking into reality. They have no fucking clue about what it is, and they don't want it here. And they do not have the guts to have to level something against it and to tell it, get the fuck out. You don't belong here. This isn't your reality, it's ours. And I'm going to keep this thing fucking safe whether or not you like it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hard truth of it. Sometimes, like, you played the game Destiny, right?
Yeah.
Magicians, we're like the Iron Lords, man. We're over here trying to keep humanity safe in the Dark Ages while all of these things are preying on us, and we're over here barely able to keep coming back to life every fucking time, just trying not to freeze to death, you know? Like, that's what it is. And you're constantly fighting off these like reality devouring beings that you invoke into work, like into existence through like capitalism, and everything that we're doing right now is like a gigantic ritual to like the void to devour everything, right? And I can't for the life of me stop society for just barreling on down towards this stupid fucking machine god that wants to devour everything. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, yeah, let's just maybe like calm down and go live with the planet and stuff. That's cool, but nobody wants to fucking respect the land anymore, so I'm over here just like screaming into the void, and I don't know what the fuck to do anymore about it, man.
I feel like that's how a lot of witches feel, especially about like just the complete and blatant disregard for the land.
I can't even anymore. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this shit. We go spend. You think like you want to see how bad reality is? Go walk through a fucking landfill. Go spend time with some homeless people for a change. Like we talk about like anxiety in our box life here, but like as somebody who's done the homeless thing a little bit and was able to get out of it right now, and who's probably going back to it eventually, I can tell you what it's about, right? I'm massaging the sore point that every magician is tired of pretending like we don't have to do. When people do this stuff where they invoke realities in through like Game of Thrones, then they fail to complete their hyper sigil and they throw it off with like their season 8 being garbage and there's no real fucking lesson for people to learn from it. It's like society in a nutshell is Game of Thrones. It's conflict for the sake of it. Of course it's not going to have a good ending. How could you spin something of conflict into a good fucking ending, man? It's just conflict.
I mean,
for the sake of conflict. There's no good ending to conflict, right?
It's interesting that you say that, especially because, like, if you, a lot of people have recognized. I know in particular in the United States. I don't know. Unfortunately, I can't speak for elsewhere, but we have this like a gore fetish.
Is someone messing
The
with a
slashier
microphone?
our cinema and entertainment is, the bloodier, the gruesomer, the more that people seem to eat it up. And I've never been able to really take it.
Oh,
And a
just
lot of people
gore
tell
for
me
the
it's just
sake of
because I'm
gore.
squeamish, or
Yeah.
yeah. But like we have this violence fetish. Um, and I mean, it's interesting. It just seems to kind of, even on a psychological level, it just seems that this numbness to violence, this kind of like, yeah, not to bring this up, but there was an incident on an app recently. I'll be vague about it, where someone unfortunately videoed themselves ending their life
Mm.
Oh my
violently,
god.
and people are using which is basically psychological torture. They're hiding this video of this person doing this violent act to themselves, and they're showing their little siblings, and they're showing like their sensitive friends and stuff like that, and they think
I
it's
had
funny.
people do that to me when I was a kid. There's always been stuff like this when you were younger, or not younger, sorry. There's always been stuff like this on the internet, right? And I
Yes.
had exposure to it when I was younger, right? And as I got older, I've been lucky enough to stay away from people who gravitate towards that kind of content, you know. But I can't. I can't. I'm I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm someone who sits with some of the hardest pains in the world. I can listen to somebody who's like lost their parents. I can sit with someone who's
Mhm.
having to face their own end. I cannot be around people who need to senselessly watch or see violence. I can't have that in my life, you know? Like,
Yep.
those are the type of people that if somebody ever did that to me, I would say that is so unforgivable. And I wouldn't even need to tell someone how unforgivable that is. I wouldn't even owe them an explanation. I could just cut them out of my life forever, you know? Because that's how I view that sort of thing. Like, there's no reason. It's just senseless, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and and
Oh.
it's created a problem. You know what I mean? Like that alone. I mean, of course, I do want to also say that there is no research that suggests that that's what's making us violent necessarily, but it does kind of, it's validation in desires to be violent. So violent people view those violent acts as validation, and the more we become
Violence
desensitized to it, the more they desire to enact it, and the more they feel it's okay.
violence is something that I guess that we can't have this episode without talking about. I don't think that it's inherently negative.
Oh,
I don't think that violence is bad per se. It's really more often than not something I never want ever around me. I like want to cultivate an entire atmosphere of peace,
you
right?
know,
But I
you
don't
know,
think that I could ever say that like violence as an abstract concept is inherently negative, right?
right, right,
Because
and I,
like
mhm,
every bit of food you eat comes from like a form of violence, right? Whether it's and I'm this is I'm someone who's like picked food, for example, or like worked the dirty jobs of life, so I know that like food has pests that get killed for it. They poison rats in every kitchen that you have ever had a meal in, you know?
mhm,
Like, it's the hard truth that nobody really wants to see, that it's just hiding underneath the counter with all of them right there, but we just pretend it's not, and we
for
slap our labels on stuff and we
right.
forget about it, you know?
For me, I mean, exactly like you, like there is a level of harm that has to happen for life to proceed, and that's just biological. Um,
Hmm.
I think violence is something different. Like violence is not self-defense. Like violence isn't protecting people with force. Violence is senseless. Violence is not justified. Violence is it's different than that, at least in my mind, and I'm comfortable
I
with
guess
that.
it
Like, I'm
comes down
comfortable
to
with that
like,
not being like
no, that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I like that you make that discretion, because I'd almost see those things like madness, and this is like why English is such a bad language, right? Because you have a word like violence that can mean so many different things because it's so charged and it's this big bad concept, and when you hear it, somebody automatically has their own interpretation of what that word means, and you have a different one versus me, right? And the concepts that you describe are very much abhorrent things that I would avoid. I would like coin those things almost under madness, because violence is like when you go to cut a chicken's head off before eating it, right? Or when the mother bird kicks the young chick out of the nest to learn to fly, right? And if the bird doesn't learn to fly, they die, that kind of thing, right? Like, that is an act of violence, but that's also how nature proceeds, right? Like,
Right.
predators are required for the natural balance of an ecosystem, right? And prey animals need to get killed by coyotes and wolves so that things can exist the way that they do, because that's how nature fucking made it, right? And all of the problems that keep happening in society is with like our so human abstractions of like good and evil and wrong, and all of these individual moral objections to things. And like, I am a very strong moral person and a very strong principled person, right? But I also believe at the end of the day that like I listen to Mama Earth, because the land is the one who talks, and I listen to the land at the end of the day.
Sometimes I feel like I would get flack from other witches, and I'm sure there are witches. Well, there are witches out there who give you flack regardless. But I don't. As a practicing witch, I'm not very interested in death. I don't really speak with the dead. I don't communicate with the dead. I don't seek out interactions from beyond the veil. I've really only ever had one or two very distinct moments where I knew that it was a passed on human spirit that was talking to me. And I'm okay with that. And I know like it's such a common thing that you find especially in tradcraft, in particular tradcraft. And now that there's more tradcraft books out there, you're seeing it a lot more. And basically they're just saying, like hedge crossing, that idea of, communing with the spirits of the other, is part of tradcraft. It's like a pillar, it's like a defining thing. And it almost makes it sound like, well, if you don't do that, then you can't call yourself a trad witch or witch.
Yeah.
I think, if I may, I think I totally know exactly what you're saying, because I actually made a video in which I was talking about like key features of traditional craft, and I mentioned spirit working and communicating with spirits. And I think the one thing I try to tell people, I think I do a better job on here though, is that traditional witchcraft, I know right now it's having this boom, right? And I think it's because for whatever reason people are kind of tired of the problematic nature of some other traditions. I don't mean to. I don't want to try to. I don't want to insult
Christianity.
that too.
I'll
Yeah.
just say it.
That wasn't the only thing I was
Christianity.
talking about, but absolutely, I was talking about other sort of neo-pagan traditions as well. But and I think it's because of the focus on kind of getting back to your own roots. You know what I mean, and stop trying to get back to other people's roots. Cough, cough, ATRs. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, now of course,
ATRs.
African traditional religions.
I don't understand the reference that you're making. I'm sorry.
Oh, what I'm trying to say was like people are trying to get back to their own ancestral roots and not like
Mhm.
like we've been kind of appropriating a lot of like other neo-pagan traditions appropriate like hoodoo and voodoo and stuff like that, and they try to break into those traditions. And all I'm saying is that people are kind of, I think, some people are kind of coming to traditional craft, uh, looking for an older, more culturally significant to them. Uh, the thing is that people think that traditional craft in any of its incarnations needs to be, and from anywhere in the world, wherever that traditional craft may be from, whether it's brujeria, um, curandera, work, I don't remember the practice. I don't know how to say it. Um, Wherever that traditional craft may be from, people think that it can't grow, right? Like that it has to be, it has to be traditional, that it has to be stuck in the past, or else it's no longer traditional witchcraft.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is that tradition needs to grow, and that's how magic has survived in a lot of ways. I mean, I have Sophia to really thank for this.
Oh wow.
In a lot of ways, Sophia's practice of Chaos magic has really opened my mind uh, to understanding this even more. I was already kind of coming to this on my own, but Sophia, you've really helped me. Um, and yeah, so Jay, what I'm trying to say to you is it's that like it might be, important for many people, and it might even be traditional, but what is your tradition? You know what I mean? Like, what is your traditional witchcraft? You know what I'm saying? That's for you to make. That's not for people who've been dead for a long time. Just
Okay.
because I work with the dead, for instance, doesn't mean that they are great guides. The ancestors are amazing, but you have the right to practice how you practice. You know what I mean? The dead are not the ancestors are amazing, but they're not you still have the right to make your own choices.
You
So
know,
not working with the dead is perfectly fine.
I know you're directing that at Jay, but god damn it, there was a huge longing in me that opened up when you were talking about like what are your traditions, because I wanted to scream for like every fucking mixed child in the fucking world who doesn't know. I don't know. I don't know my culture because I never got to learn it.
Right,
And
and
you're busy
therefore
playing catch up as an adult, and everybody thinks that you're busy playing a fucking imposter's game because you should have learned it growing up when you were a kid. And it's just like it's so hard.
that's
Some
exactly
people
why.
come to it late in the game. Some people don't get to know their family's history until later on because colonialism is a bastard, and you have to like
Right.
grow up innocent believing that you're a fucking white person for your safety, right? And so
Hmm.
then when you're coming back to it and trying to figure out where did all this come from, people look at you and they're like, well, why don't you already know? Look
Right.
at you over here playing dress up, right? And it's just like, man, i
And that's
wish I wish I had not had my family's chain broken. I very obviously there would have been a tradition that would have been passed down that I didn't get, and I'm everything that I experience as a problem in my life as a human being is the lack of that tradition that I have not been given, that I am just dying for. Because if I had had that tradition or culture when I was a kid, when
Yep.
I was sick and dying, like I was talking about earlier, there would have been people to come to talk to me about it to actually help me deal with it, right? And I've had to just fight with this my whole life and be alone and just suffer and struggle. Why? Because I don't know where we come from. Like, man, fuck, it hurts. And I tear up just talking about it because, like,
No, precisely. And I mean, but that's exactly it, right? Like, unfortunately, the way history is played out, you need to make your own traditions. So that's what I mean when I say, what are your traditions? You personally, you know what I mean? What have you made for yourself, um, and that has become your traditional. And when I say traditional craft, I don't just mean witchcraft, right? Like, I mean, like, what are your traditions and whatever it is that you do? You know what I mean? Like, this is, unfortunately, it's an unfortunate need to adapt to horrible situations that have occurred that over time we may be able to know, but a lot of things are dead, unfortunately. Horrible colonizers, words. Here's my anxiety again. Horrible colonizers decided they had the right to stomp on everything. um Colonizers not just being colonial people who moved to America, but colonizers all over the globe.
Yeah.
Anybody can be a colonizer. That's why I like that term. It's not a skin color, it's an action.
Right. I just like to be very specific. I just like for people to know what I'm saying. I always for whatever reason I'm having this anxiety of not being particular enough, and for whatever reason I keep trying to make sure that I'm being very, very particular. I don't know why I'm doing
It's
that.
because
Anyway.
you're worried about getting attacked online, because everybody's worried about it right now. That's what destroys a person in modernity, right? Is a call out, right? The most dangerous thing to come from me wouldn't be the cops, wouldn't be somebody on the street. It'd be my own community trying to destroy me when they've had enough of me being vocal or being visible or being wrong or uneducated or not having learned enough, because you're not in the right positions to know. And it's somebody mad that you should have known better before opening up your voice, and they're going to come and make you awfully sorry now, aren't they?
Yeah, that's actually very true. It is this fear of the current call out cancel culture that we're experiencing, and it is very nerve-wracking. I think for me, I think the reason it's nerve-wracking for me, and I want to be real.
You're an Aries, Jay.
Wait,
Sorry,
what did Jay just say? Did he just be like,
He's like, I don't give a fuck.
You're weak.
Grow a pair. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm kidding.
No, go ahead, Scott. I'll jump in with why I don't give a fuck.
For me, it's because I care, right? It's because that nothing I say will ever be to cause someone intentional harm. There are many times where I see things that I completely disagree with, especially lately, where I'm learning to just, what? It's in particular when it's not necessarily I'm talking specifically about spiritual stuff here, because social stuff, if you see something shitty, please use your voice, but if you are safe to do so. But when it comes to the witchy stuff and the spiritual stuff, I just don't see the point in call outs and all that. And I care so much about this practice and the friends and these kind of the spiritual family at times that I've made through this practice, that the idea of being called out, I guess a lot like you, Sophie, I guess I'm almost just kind of saying what you said, just in my own words.
We're always worried about the boogeyman, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to say the boogeyman isn't real, because he is, but he's not like some person walking around in a trench coat I'm going to get somebody today. This is my fucking jam. The boogeyman is something that you become, We all have the potential to become the boogeyman when you're that person who's so angry or irate about what someone said when it wasn't necessarily something that was said with the intent of hurt. And you can always tell when the intentions behind something, right? Actually does matter. I talk a lot about morality and how in the end of the day, it is the action is really what does matter, right? But at the end of the day, sometimes the intent is all the difference, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I can take somebody literally punching me in the face. I'm not even kidding. If it's an accident, if they legitimately didn't mean to do it and they apologize to me, I will not strike them back. I have no reason to enact anger on them, right? But if somebody came at me or even something as much as spat on me, it's an entirely different thing, right? Because they're trying to do something to harm you, right? And I think that's where trauma causes problems, right? You have people, we're as a collective, we're all just, as a generation, we're fucked up, traumatized individuals with not enough therapy, and we're the only people actually doing the therapy for the whole fucking planet. So, like, whatever, fuck all the older generations. Gen Z's just looking at us going, I know, guys, I don't know how you've been holding up for this while, but holy shit. And we're like, yeah, we're tired, thanks.
Did you?
You know what I mean, though?
You saw my accidental joke on the chat when Jay was like, Scott, what do you think about death as the topic? I was like, death sounds good to me, and I was like, I mean the topic. But that was an honest to God accident. But for whatever reason, like after I said it, I was like, you know what, that works.
I, for one, choose death.
Let's just line her up. Just this will be the last episode right here.
This is it. This is the finale. No, I did kind of want to circle back real quick and kind of talk about when you guys were talking about like cancel and call out culture and why I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
See, I used to give a fuck. I used to give many fucks. I used to give all of my fucks, right? And I used to argue with people online. I used to defend myself, this and that. And I realized that it is utterly fucking pointless. Because these people, their opinions are unchangeable, unmovable, unshakable. You will not change the narrative in their head, no matter what you do.
You're right. You're so right. And I'm like laughing over here how absurdly simple it is to just not give a fuck. And it's the truth. It's like when you respond to all the bullshit that people say about you, like, you're this, you're that. Like when you let it get under your skin, they're like, oh, maybe that one's fucking true, ain't it? And if you just like literally look at them all and be like, you're a bunch of cunts and I hate you, go fuck off. They have no, you have no power here, you know. It's like
exactly that is
that Lord of the Rings meme, you have no power here.
Yeah, and you know that's honestly how I treat it. And here's my other thing too, right? So I say a problematic thing, right? So and then you know the whole goddamn internet, well, if I had that big of a following, right? So let's pretend that I do. And the whole fucking internet is like, oh my god, you're a horrible, fucking terrible person. You said this problematic thing, you know, go die. Okay. Fine. You mean to tell me you have never said or done a single problematic thing in your entire fucking life?
Oh, we're just chock full of it. This is actually a thing I was planning on writing a whole book for. About I don't have the spoons, and me telling myself I'm gonna write a book for something is just how I emotionally process whatever I'm fucking going through in my life. This is what my book that I'm never gonna release.
What you should
about.
get,
Finally.
Sophia, is a really good like voice to text software. That you can just dictate a book.
No, because if I look, I'm gonna be really honest with you. If I wanted the book, it would have fucking been here already by now. It's not about the book. It's about not wanting to have to exist under capitalism the way that I am defined as a human being. And a book is an alternative of an existence, because then you can coin yourself an author and make like, it's not even good money.
You can make some money.
You can make less than minimum wage being an author. If you let's talk about that for a minute. Oh yeah, the book will save me, myth. Yeah, well, I hate to break it to you, but when you actually make the money from the book, you're making less than, like, I don't know, somebody who's earned minimum wage for the amount of time and effort it takes for you to actually learn the skill and get good at it and apply your craft to it. And then suddenly you're wondering what the fuck you did it all for, right? And you've got this book and you're just everybody knows you and your name's out there now, and you've made an ass of yourself, or maybe helped some people. That would be cool too if you can help people in the process. But you feel like you've made an ass of yourself. Suddenly your name's out there, people know who you are, they're reading your fucking life story, your personal events and shit, and people like have a vested interest in you as an individual human being. Then it's like, wow, what made me think that I had such a unique story to tell? And like, obviously I do have stories to tell because I'm like a storyteller, right? But it's, when you have it, it's like Pandora's box. There is no going back. It's like doing sex work. It's like doing porn, right? The moment you have your first book published and you as a queer author, you're in the public eye, you know? Everybody is going to know your existence. My face is fucking recognizable. I'll be everywhere, right? And then suddenly I'll be nowhere. All that girl who has the turquoise eyes, who showed up at the dance parties, is just missing, and everybody wonders what happens to her as she fucking just disappears off into like the nothingness of the night by herself in solemn loneliness, you know. Don't mind, I'm just not going to make this episode into like Sophia rants, okay?
We should have a whole just a whole subcategory of Sophia rants.
Just give Sophia drugs and let her rant for like 4 days and just record a book.
Live stream. With the live stream.
Right? Yeah, live stream. Sophia rants.
Apparently I say gold. Like, people sit down and listen to me and they're like, wow, this is really good. And I get like people messaging me online who are like, oh wow, and they like send me stuff. I'm like, just
I mean,
stop, man.
people
I'm just a fucking person.
people listen to this podcast, so I mean, if people did not enjoy your ranting, we wouldn't have listeners. So
and I get it, and I love everybody who enjoys my rants, but just like your rants as an individual are valid too.
yes.
And just you can do drugs and rant about the things that you don't like too, and record it and put it on a podcast and be all mystical about it. I'm not that special.
What a great idea for an episode, right? Or maybe something I could put together. Someone write this down before I forget. But
you're recording.
Oh yeah, that's true. So listeners, hold me to this one. If you're gonna hold me to anything, hold me to this one. Okay. Partake in your whatever of choice, or nothing, whatever it may be. Maybe it's just tea. I don't care. And rant about something. Rant about something and send me like a 30 to 60 second rant, and I will put them all together. Actually, you know what? Maybe even more, because I don't really know how many listeners we have. Like, I don't know how many like
rant episode.
Yeah, right.
Oh
and
my
we
God,
just
people just have an episode of like everybody bitching about the shit that they're just
rants.
tired of.
Yes, and
well,
I
mean,
think
not even necessarily bitching, because rants aren't even necessarily bitching. But
yeah, just people just ranting about whatever the hell you need to get off your chest. Just rant. Obviously, I'm going to have to listen to them ahead of time, and if it's far too explicit for an explicit podcast, I'm sorry, I can't put that in.
Yeah.
But
Like
yes.
1,000 years ago in Narnia, like my Uncle Pete came into my room and it's like, whoa, no, we don't want that on the podcast.
Yeah. Obviously there'll be like 1,000 content warnings on that episode. But yes, send in your rants. It'll just be an ongoing process. It'll be something that we mention in every recording going forward. Send in your rants. That's what I want to know. Please rant to us, and I'm going to compile them into a single rant episode.
Look, I think the only thing that even makes this podcast unique and good is the fact that we don't follow a format or anything, that we can just like literally sit here.
Yeah, we literally just turn the mic on.
and people can just like listen to it. There's no like shame or judgment, you know, and at the end of the day, if there's like value or wisdom that comes out of it, it's like between the person who's speaking and the person who's listening, and everything else is fucking God's business, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So to kind of bring this back to our main topic, though, so really the subject of death, and it's kind of interesting that we got started talking on this idea of like our cancel and call out culture, because that was actually kind of the topic that Scott had suggested before. So I think it's kind of interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how we've kind of blended the two, and I think the reason that is because in addition with this concept of death, right? So you're no longer alive, your body is no longer here and interacting with people, right? So But what does live on is your memory, the things you left behind. Your tweets live on, your Facebook messages, your blog posts, your
Yeah.
podcast.
This fucking episode.
This fucking episode. Your digital
Oh
footprint is
god.
very much a place where you remain alive. You remain alive in this in
In the memory of
cyberspace.
the machine god. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where your memory lives on, and I think that is a lot of reason why people may feel extra anxiety about, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't want to do the wrong thing, I don't want to get called out, because then people, sometimes it goes through that whole other step of like you get doxxed, or people dredge up the tweets from like from the fucking the minds of
2005.
like everyone's.
Or if somebody makes an accusation, because like I'm gonna say something. Who here has ever had drunk sex in your life?
Drunk sex?
Probably most everybody ever.
Yes.
How do you know the other person didn't think that you had assaulted them in the end because you took advantage of the fact that they were drunk?
Absolutely.
Think about that one for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How did we ever manage the messy business of consent and party drugs, and how we go to these spaces like dances where everybody knowingly goes and gets fucked up, does drugs, whatever, and they go into this space, they grind on each other without asking each other.
Mhm.
Loud music makes them feel like it's okay, and like maybe you let it slide because they're hot or whatever, and or you have a crush on them or something, and maybe this will be a cool hookup or some shit. But like, no, outside of any other context, like that's a lot of crossing of consent boundaries, right? Two people who are inebriated on substances, you're so loud with the music that you can't even hear if the person's consented, and here right now people are just like listening to me and they're like, man, listen to this bitch killing the vibe. She can't just like let people dance and make out and just have a good fucking time too. And that's true, right? We should be able to just be like humans and dance and make out with each other and like do these very human things without needing to like constantly worry about all of this stuff. But
that undercurrent is there.
The all-seeing eye of the phone is always there, and there might always be someone recording, and there might always be something, like back in the day when we were younger, before there was the internet, it was between you and anonymity. Like if you fucked up, it was between the person you fucked up with and yourself, and how in your community and how you reconciled with that, right? And like you would have to like talk to the person in very real ways, and there was community accountability on these things before there was police, before there was colonialism, right? And if someone got taken advantage of somebody in a context that they felt uncomfortable with, you could have a conversation about it and like have that dialogue, right? Like if somebody, and I think what it always comes down to is we're trying to find somebody else to be this giant monster, right? When in reality, we're all just people who've been hurt. No one's really truly bad, I don't think. I don't really, like, do you look at nature? Is there any animal that's bad? Is a wolf bad because it's hungry? Is a coyote bad because it had its land taken and it's starving and it needs a fucking meal so it scarfs down a pigeon in front of you? Like, no, it's not, right? But everything in society that we keep building that observes everything and catalogs everything, it's always shame. I'm going to bring it right back to shame from the start of the episode, right? That's all of life. It's everything about the parasite god is shame, 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 fear, fear.
Let me say, if I may, in particular about shame. And I want to speak kind of, I'm talking to both of you, of course, but almost directly to our audience. Shame is an incredibly dangerous, useless emotion that we often cast upon other people. We have no idea when we're doing it how much damage that we could be doing to our fellow friend or, person kind.
It's the one hex that everyone knows how to do, and they don't even know that they're doing it.
The times where I was literally willing to end my life was because people were shaming me for something that they had perceived me as having done wrong. You know?
We shame is, oh my God, I will say this. It is one of those things where Jay, you calling it a hex is super interesting. I always, when I started working with my therapist and she started discussing her professional opinions about shame
Mm-hmm.
from a psychological perspective, she made me realize it's this idea of, if you remember the stories, the mythologies of wizards and magicians past, where they could literally blast their opponent, and this is in mythology and folklore,
Right.
and you could see the physical scarring somewhere along the person. Shame, if nothing else, is a remnant of this powerful magic. Although this is dark shit, it blasts people. It shatters them. It breaks them in ways.
Yeah.
And I think it is not something. I don't know. I guess I want people
No,
to ask
really, the
themselves.
concepts of shame and honor really are what shatter individuals and make
Hmm.
them give everything up
Oh,
for
absolutely,
what?
absolutely.
For what?
And what is call out culture but a constant cycle of, shame versus honor? And and kind of along that same vein is also what I was thinking of
Wow.
Yeah.
why I don't let it bother me as much is, one, because I know that I am a good person, and
Yeah.
I know that I am,
It's true.
and
Yeah.
I don't need anyone to tell me I am, because I know I am, and I have that much confidence in myself. And I think back to me in high school, like when you're talking to your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever, and you're like, I don't deserve you. You're too good for me. And like you're like 15 or 16, you're like, wait, what? And then I think about it now, and I'm like, what the fuck was I talking about? Like, they didn't deserve me, because I'm like way better than them as a person. So
That's often talking about is like vain looks of like, oh, you're so hot. Somebody like you would never date someone like me because the only thing that somebody would see in a human being is their surface value of what their body looks like rather than how they act or treat human beings,
Yeah.
So that's what that underlying guilt is. It's just like body appearance and the expectations of desirability within a society that tells you that desirability is everything,
hmm and I think about that a lot, and how much, I guess, power that has over the psyche. But there's a couple things that I've kind of done, and I made this decision when I started this podcast, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna start a podcast, and that's the goal of the podcast is for it to be listened to by as many people as possible, right? Just like anything that you kind of create. So you want it to reach the people that want and need to hear it. This podcast is not for everybody, and I know that. I knew that when I created it. You know what I mean? I knew that when the concept was there. I knew that when I would, when I just was listening to the conversations that me and Scott had in their kitchen. I knew that this podcast wasn't for everyone, and I was okay with that. I was okay if we only had, like a listenership of like 10 people. Fine. Those 10 people, they like the podcast. That's cool. So
I remember Jay literally
That's
like kind of bringing that to my attention, like actually kind
yeah.
of being like, you understand that this is how it's going to be. Like you actually prepared me for that, knowing
Yeah.
because I'm very sensitive and very kind of healing from shame-filled trauma. You were very
yeah.
aware of that, and you actually purposely brought that up in
Mhm.
conversation with me.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
because
remember.
I do remember, because I remember, I remember the vibe of those early conversations. And this is something that I've kind of started to, it's just, this is my thought, right? Is if someone on some social media, like right now, say, just started coming at us like, oh, your thoughts on blah 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 blah, just started doing that whole shit, I'd be like,
They've done it.
yeah, we've had a couple, but like, oh, your thoughts on this or that, and I'm all for discourse. If you wanna talk, go back and forth about ideas, concepts, theories, by all means. I'll even invite you on the damn podcast if you really got that much to say. That's totally fine with me. But I don't particularly enjoy those people that just come out and they're just like, you're shit, you're this, you're trash, you're garbage. That just like shame you, right, for being who you are and shame you for the things that you say. And honestly, I feel nothing. I feel nothing when those comments arise because I just talk around them. I just move the conversation around that person. I shift the course of the discourse. There's no reason to get hung up on that because all they're trying to do is derail you. They're just trying to derail this thing that is gaining momentum. I don't know why they do it. Maybe
Okay,
they.
I'm just gonna say this right now.
Mm.
Us over here in like water department, because I'm like water moon. I'm just marveled and just biting my fucking fingernails at how you're able to just grounded Zen master walk through the bullshit and not let the forest that's on fire fucking upset you.
Wait, Cynthia, what sign are you?
Shit.
Me?
I'm a Virgo, but I'm a Cancer moon with a
Right.
fucking grand trine in Cancer of like it's like Chiron, Jupiter, and my moon and like some other shit. So I'm like Watertown over here. I'm like,
you know what?
I'm gonna pretend like I'm a Virgo, but I'm
Oh
really
my
just
God.
unbridled emotions
I
behind
just
it.
realized something. We're a lot alike. I'm Cancer, but Virgo moon and Scorpio rising.
Yeah.
So I'm
We've
like
had
all
this
water.
conversation that we're like similar reflections of each other, but in inverse aspects. And
Mhm.
I'm the like outwards more punch God in the face, and you're more oh my God, no, let's hide up and curl up in a blanket. But I can also be that person too, and you can also punch God in the face,
Right.
depending on our fucking moods. Right?
Exactly. So yeah, Jay, you are like
I'm sometimes I am the kid hiding in the blanket, just going, oh my God, no, don't yell.
And
You
if
know?
you ask Jay, when Jay first met me, I was the kind of like, fuck the god.
Yes.
Fuck what they think.
I mean, Scott, the first two things I learned about you through Rick were you did you did a reading with Rick's Magic the Gathering cards, like you were doing like some kind of like cartomancy.
I love it.
Which is cool. I was intrigued. I was like, oh, that's pretty dope. That's cool.
Chaos Mage 9000 reading from Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh cards or like Sakura Cardcaptor Sakura cards like I got on my fucking altar or like Pokemon cards like Ursa. That's like level 9000, some serious cool shit I want to be around. Anytime I see that, I'm like, you're my people right now. I love you.
Exactly.
Into that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm pretty
scared.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, he was like, yeah, my friend Scott. Grant, this was my Wiccan phase. I would just like to kind of, preface that with that. This was my Wiccan coming out, my love and light phase coming into myself. And Rick was like, yeah, my friend Scott, he read my my magic cards, like tarot, and also he curses people all the time. And I was like, he did not sell you very well to me.
What do you need to be flinging curses for all the goddamn time?
Oh my god, I really wasn't. He just explained it really badly.
Yes, he did.
You're someone who likes to fanfic about cursing, but never actually works up the grave dirt under your nails to do it.
Well, Scott does. Scott does, but not like all the time.
I just
if you have to,
yes,
sure.
My whole thing is, you know why I do that though, and I love that you brought that up. The reason I do that with curse work and baneful work is because a certain level of frenzy that I believe needs to be worked up to get that work done, at least for me. And so I get very almost pompous, but very serious about it in a very like kind of like a fuck yeah kind of way. And that's why, because I believe it works people up, but I try to let people know that you don't need to go there just because someone's like, fuck you, man. Like you just say fuck you back and keep moving. You know what I
do
mean?
agree.
Or you like pull out a knife and say, you wanna go, bud?
No, I do agree that I do agree with you, Scott. There needs to be a certain degree of frenzy sort of built up to like frenzy, but you have to be able to direct it in a logical, manner. But a certain frenzy. It's almost like it reminds me of like that like stereotypical image of like football players before the big game. You're like, yeah, bro, let's fucking go, bro. Let's fucking do it.
Me over here in the sticks, though, when I straight up said, "You want to go, bud?" Like, that was my actual tone of like what I would say if someone was coming at me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that.
I wasn't joking when I said it there too. I was like, "You want to go, bud?" Like, that's like the phrase when someone's like,
Ready to go. Yeah.
yeah.
No, I completely agree. But yes, it's kind of how I'm approaching things, right? It's just taking this sort of they look at people like us, or people look at people like us, and they laugh at us. They laugh at us for what we think. They laugh at us for what
Good.
we've said. They laugh. They laugh.
I
They
laugh
laugh.
at me too.
Right.
Yep.
And I laugh at them and I keep it pushing, because you're just not worth my time.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
not worth my time. My time is valuable. I don't give a shit. You could subtweet, tweet, retweet. I don't give a fuck. Tweet till your goddamn thumbs fall off. I don't care.
The Philly came out.
Yeah, it really did.
Look.
I don't give a fuck.
Yes.
But for real, I really
Give me
don't.
my Philly trash. I love it.
And I don't mean to sound hostile. In fact, I'm coming at it from a place of complete anti-hostility. It's a place of complete peace.
But no, like,
I'll just
seriously, like,
walk around
haters are
you.
gonna
I'll step
fucking
over
hate,
you.
man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, that's why there's like saying's been said a million fucking times, is haters hate. Just like, let them do it. Like,
Right.
it's since the dawn of time. Since the dawn of time, there's been people mad at other people for whatever fucking reason, whether it's their shoes are cool and they want their shoes, or they wish they had the other person's teeth, or whatever. Just let them go at it, man. Like, fuck, man. I don't want to have any part of that shit no more, you know? And you know, it's natural on the conversation of death to talk about everything but death, because it's never about death, because death is this. It's when you stop talking. It's when it's done. You can't talk about something like that, right? It can only be experienced, right? You can lose someone, and you can know what it's like to have them never speak to you again, to never draw breath and to move, right? And that's why, as a Western society, we don't talk about death directly, you know, because what's there to say? Do we examine how the electrons leave your muscles and you may not move anymore? Do we examine the weight of the soul, as it's been called, the difference between when the person's alive and they have that breath of life in them to when
The death rattle.
Yeah, I did it there too, you notice, right?
I know.
It's 'cause I've had fucking
That's very
practice.
good.
I've had fucking practice doing this shit, my dude.
If I may, also, I'm sorry.
Go, please, always.
The one thing I realized too, Jay, is that this episode, I mean, it is about death. This episode was about a concept of death, a facet of death, one in which it seemed more predominantly not about, you know, the loss of life and necessarily even all about, you know, the final breath, but of a societal death, of a social death, of a moral and ethical, and it was death of a more abstract nature, it seemed. And I
Yeah.
think that happened organically. I don't think we intended it, but every time all three of us get together, one thing I will say, all three of us are very intentional speakers. None of us in this little triumvirate open our mouths unless we kind of know what we're trying to get at and how it relates to what we're talking about.
Yeah, or how we feel.
Yeah, and I think for whatever reason, the death was perfect, like as a topic. It just went into a more, you know, other ways to look at death. You know what I mean?
And I'll say this too. I like death because it opens up a million other conversations, right? You want to talk about life and everybody starts talking about like sustainable futures and all this other shit. But the good conversations start happening for me when people start approaching the realism of death and finality, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense that when you have a death episode, there's no way to really feel how it's going to go. You have to parse it out as it happens, right? In conversation with other people, because that's like death. It's organic, it's messy, it doesn't happen in your perfect deathbed scene, waiting in a hospital with all your loved ones gathering around you, looking down on you so you can say, bye. Oh, and disappear. Like, no, man, I hate to break it to you, but death is a fucking car accident you don't see coming. Death is the fucking is you catching what was it that happened to this guy? He had food poisoning and he was like 60 years old. He was like somebody that my sister knew at work, and she was close with this guy, right? And he had a family and 60 years old, and it's not that old, but he had food poisoning, and that's something that happens to fucking near everybody, and it got him this time. It just did. And they found him in his apartment, keeled over on his chair. He'd probably been sitting there for days, right? And I'm not somebody who like is a grim person. I don't like look up like faces of death online, like all that shit we were talking about earlier. But like, that's how it happens. It's not perfect. You are not going to have goodbyes. I'm sorry. I lost like somebody who's like an adoptive parent to me this August. When they were dying, I was playing a video game. Right,
and
on
you
the
don't.
last time I could have talked with them, And the last 2 weeks they were alive, I could have messaged them and told them I loved them, but I didn't.
And it doesn't
because I
hit
was
you.
dealing with my shit. And it doesn't hit you until you even just to stop to talk about it like that, right? Because then they're just gone. So like, it's never easy. It's never going to be, oh, I'll see you on the other side, Granddad. I didn't even get to see any of my grandparents go. My dad wouldn't even let me come to see my grandfather be sick and old because he was worried that it would destroy the memories I had of my grandpa.
Yeah, that happened to me
And
too.
that fucked me for the rest of my life. I'm still bitter to my dad. Not about him beating me as a child, but about him not letting me talk to my granddad before he passed. That hurts far more than anything else he ever did to me,
Yeah,
It's because it's a raw wound, and it's not gonna ever be simple, and it's not gonna be, you're not gonna get to say your goodbyes, and that's why death memorials are such a thing for people, right?
I actually, one of the hardest deaths for me was actually Sarah. It was, I still cry, like, on the anniversary and everything. There are also just some days where I wake up thinking about her, and, don't get me wrong, like, I've had encounters with Sarah after the fact. I don't like to talk about it, but, and it was good stuff. It's just for me. And, but it's not the same. And the thing with me and Sarah was that I was always so afraid. We hadn't talked in a while due to my depression, and I wasn't seeing a therapist yet, so I was really bad. And I was uber flaky, and we had this great idea to start a witchy book club, and I promised her I'd be a part of it and I'd help her, and I didn't. And she called me, and she was really hurt and really upset, and she let me know that. And unfortunately, our friendship wasn't as strong after. And the thing is that we have to understand the reason why she affected me so is that she told me she viewed me as a little brother, and I'm like trying not to cry now. And for someone
cry. It's important to cry. Come on, you can't have an episode where you talk about death where you don't even have the humanity to cry about it. Like, let it be it.
I just cry. I don't know. I sometimes I just have this thing with crying. The now anyway. Anyway,
crying is good.
It is.
Crying
It
shows that you're a
absolutely is.
real human being and you have real feelings, and you're not some psychopath who's afraid to have a real hard moment and honestly admit the pains and faults of reality. That means that you're a
Yeah.
fucking human being if you can cry, and you should be proud of it, that you feel enough
Oh,
to actually
absolutely.
care enough to weep at the loss of somebody. That is a humanizing thing that you should never apologize for. You should be proud of the fact that you feel that.
I am. I think it's for me. I cry about Sarah when I'm alone. I cry about Sarah when I need when I need to talk to her. Oh man, here it comes.
Mhm.
Um, she was different, way different from me. I mean, she was very sensitive, but she just she just viewed the world very differently. Uh, and she used to her and her fiance used to take me on these really wonderful trips all around Pennsylvania. We did this occult store weekend trip sort of thing. It was actually a day trip, and we went all over. Like we went to uh, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. We went all over to different occult shops, and they took me to the Columcille Standing Stones out in PA. They just took me all over. We did so much stuff together, and like I said, she treated me like a sibling, like a little brother that she never had. And the regret of me and my depression getting in the way of our friendship
Mhm.
and her dying and
Mhm.
me never being able to feel as if I apologized enough.
Mhm.
And yeah. Whew. Um it hurts. It still hurts. I a mutual really wonderful friend of ours, Tara, uh she told me uh she reassured me that Sarah only ever said that that I was a wonderful person, and he's kind and all. She had only wonderful things to say about me, and I, of course, her. But I get it. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I understand I'm thankful for her and her still kind of being a spiritual presence in my life, but the thing is that it is different. It is I know for a lot of people they might be like, well, Scott, you're who you are. You can just tell her now, and that's true, and I have and I do all the time. Um, it's not the same, as if I were to be able to tell her now, in person. But
Death
yeah,
is a lot like losing people too, like friendship breakups. Like
yeah.
it's the same energy, you know? Like
Oh,
if I think
absolutely.
about the hardest things, it's not just like people who've passed away, but like people who you can't be in their lives anymore, you know? Like that kind of stuff. It's always hard because what we're talking about, what death as an episode really comes down to is loss, right?
Hmm.
Something's there one minute and then it's not.
Loss of self,
No,
loss of another
yeah.
person,
And
loss of
anything else is like inauthentic. Like if we were to try and come at this episode and be like, here's the afterworld, you know? Like man, just be here now. And this is a thing too. Like, we don't even know if we're gonna make it out of 2020 alive as a human species right now. There's this collective tension and unrest that everybody is feeling, and nobody wants to even just say the fucking things that I just said. But there's that constant background and radiation of, do we get nuked? Do we all just die in a tsunami now? Like everybody's just collectively waiting for the end. It's like the 2012 Mayan calendar. It's like it was miscalculated by exactly 8 years, and it's just happening right fucking now. Don't even get me started on that meme.
I know
But
that
it
that's
really
a
does
whole.
feel like that is a whole meme. Don't even get me started. Okay, actually, I'll say something since we're on the death episode. Memes are the universe's way of talking to you. I'm sorry that I have to say that for everybody, but memes are literally how the universe is like, "Hi, here's messages. I'm just gonna scream it at you," and then like the algorithms will show up with like, "Here's music you need to listen to right now," and you're like, I don't want to listen to this right now," but the universe is like, "But you gotta," and you're like, "Oh." You know, like I'm sorry. I know every trad craft witch is gonna spit at me for saying this, but fuck, man, meme magic is way spicy, and that stuff's the future. And I do more meme magic as a witch than I can even explain to people, because they ain't ready for it. They ain't ready for just the fact that like the casual person on the street who's homeless, who you think is screaming absurdities, might actually be truly divinely listening to God and channeling insight that you can pick up on. And when you notice that he can notice, he notices you, and he looks at you and says, "I know that you can hear." And like this happens to me sometimes. I'll have like people who are homeless or have like mental illness, like they'll come up to me and be like, "You're recording me," and I'll be like, "I'm not fucking recording you, man." And like they think that like I'm just like watching them is like recording them or whatever. And it's like this weird kind of like in between space where like one wall is touching another wall and you don't know what's going on, you know?
Guess that makes sense.
Have I just completely gone on a tangent here? Is this all spaghetti noodles and nobody knows what the fuck I'm talking about anymore?
A little bit. I mean, I can definitely I get the gist of kind of what you're getting at.
What even spurred me down that train of thought?
The Mayan calendar.
Right, sorry.
It's okay. On an episode like this, I fully expected to know like an endless supply of tangents and rants about whatever it may be.
But like, how the fuck are we gonna get out of this? How the fuck are we as a society gonna get out of 2020? And what comes next?
The same way we've gotten out of everything, really hard work.
I was gonna say by fucking each other.
That might create more people, more problems. I don't know.
Bonobo monkey.
Whoa! I did not say impregnating. I said fucking.
Well,
Okay, there's a
spooning
difference.
leads to forking, and forking leads to...
There's a stern difference between fucking and childbirth, my friend.
That's true.
So I'm gonna drop a truth bomb. No, people don't have children due to lack of education. People have children due to lack of access to fucking resources, okay? So you get pregnant, and then in the state that you live in, it's illegal for you to get an abortion because some fundamentalist fucking group is gonna shoot you if you go to have this thing happen because your unborn child has more fucking rights than you do, apparently. And like, oh man, there's so many things. Like people know how to use condoms, but condoms cost money. Where do you get condoms? If there's not sexual health clinics that give access to these resources out, then people get impregnated. People have kids too young, and then kids are born without families, like or end up like me without people to truly care for them, and you end up this wild bastard child that nobody wants to be fucking responsible for, and you end up like this like youth dredge of society that nobody wants to claim responsibility for, but you're somebody's fucking kid who never got taught, right? And it's not that somebody didn't have the education to understand how dicks and vaginas make babies. Everybody in the fucking world knows that, but it comes down to access to resources, right? Yes, they do. Yeah, they fucking do, pretty much. And outside of, look, I'm going to tell you this, outside of really specific wildness of like what constitutes the world for America, pretty much everybody in the world knows how fucking kids come about. It's not a mystery, right? And everybody, I'll tell you this, people knew about pulling out before colonization happened. You think the white man invented birth control? Holy tits, bud.
True, but I think we might be getting on. See, we've come full circle. We started talking about death, and now we're talking about the creation of life and
But
birth.
that's the process of discussing death, and that's why, as a subject, it's the most fruitful conversation, because you're always going to have something to talk about, because death means something on a different conversational set piece to everybody, right? Like this to Jay, it could be about like your experience that you had with it, right? Like you could right now be like, here's an experience I had with it on a close, intimate, personal level. Or you can skirt around the edges and like talk about what it means to you as like an abstract concept, right? But at the end of the day, how we react with that and how we relate to it tells us about who we are as human beings, right?
Really, my only other interaction with death, and it's kind of what you were saying earlier, Sophia, about how I think you said it was your dad didn't let you see your grandfather, toward the end
Yeah.
there. My dad did the same thing with my grandmom. So she died in the hospital. She had hepatitis C because she got a surgery on her spine back in the 70s, in which they did two things. One, they fucked up and nicked her spine, and so she ended up kind of
Oh,
like dragging one of her legs through the majority of her life. And the second thing that they did was they did not have adequately sterilized materials, and she got hep C from that surgery. So
fuck.
she ended up dying from liver complications, which hep C does cause.
Yep.
So she ended up dying from liver complications, and she died rather on the younger side. Like, she was only 60. I think she just hit 60, maybe 61. So she had a lot more to go. She had a lot more life to live. It's just, her liver said otherwise. And she died in a hospital, like that slow death, the surgeries, the this, the that, and eventually it ended on the on the ventilator, and either she's gonna breathe on her own or she's not. And so they took her off, and she couldn't, and that was the end of that chapter. So, but
It's such a terrible way to go.
yeah, and my dad,
That's worse than anything, honestly. Sorry.
yeah, no, I completely agree. And my dad, this was during like the whole economic, what do they call this, the Great Recession of 2008, like that kind of era. So it's right when I was getting into my last years of high school, and big change kind of moment in life and stuff. And so yeah, my dad was unemployed at the time because there's nothing going on in construction, and so all he had was time to be there every day at the hospital, which in a way is good, but which in a way also destroyed him permanently forever. So, but my dad, he wouldn't let us go to the hospital. We went once. We went the day that she went in, when she was still talking and relatively, quote unquote fine. It was a very slow decline. Or I would say it was a very rapid decline, because I think she was only maybe hospitalized for a week or two. But that is my other interaction with death. And yeah, I've been to a couple funerals here and there, but interestingly enough, the one death that hurt, I don't know if I would say hurt, but made me think the most. The one death that made me think the most so far in my life was a member of our local pagan community here in Philly, who I had only seen at pagan pride events. It's the only time I seen him, and it was kind of almost in passing. And I think the one year he actually volunteered, he was a volunteer one year, because I remember tossing him a T-shirt and being like, "Hey, thanks for helping out." His name is Colin. I won't give a last name, just to protect his identity and whatnot, but his name was Colin. He also went by a name that I still have no idea how to pronounce. Vengix. I can never know if it's Vengix or Vengix, but
It's probably less respectful to try and pronounce it in the middle of a podcast than it would be to not.
But he went by a name that I can never pronounce, and it always. But it's funny though, because I always had meant to ask him how he pronounced it, and I never got to. And so I always just thought that was...
You know what? I'm just going to say this. That's actually quite a polite question that a lot of people are really shy to ask
Mm-hmm.
because it admits a lack of understanding. And in our society right now, we really kind of only try to hold places for people who have answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't try to hold place for people who have questions. And to approach somebody who obviously is from a different culture that I know nothing about, that how the fuck am I supposed to have just been educated magically when we come from different parts of the world? The most kind and respectful thing you can do is ask them how to say their name so that they don't have to listen to you butcher their fucking name every time that you talk. Like, this is something I sit down and do with when I like really get to know someone, so I'll make sure I know what their name is, right? I'm not gonna like throw somebody's name out there, for example, but if someone comes from a culture that you don't understand, ask a fucking question, man.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we come from different worlds. The most disrespectful thing that you can do is try and act like you know this individual's name well enough to like just know how to perfectly say it already, right?
Yeah.
It's almost dehumanizing, right? And the most real thing you can do is just say, hey, I mean, I don't know anything about where you come from. You seem very kind, and I want to speak to you as respectfully as I possibly can. How do I say your name, right? That's I've never gotten mad at somebody asking me how do you say Chloe Sophia Lamontine, because when you see my name, it looks incredibly daunting, right? Because it's like got all these French accents in it and stuff, and they're like, well, I want to make sure that I say your name right, you know? That's never hurt me, you know? Because like some people have hard to say names, like that's is what it is. And if honestly, sometimes that it is a hard point where sometimes a name is hard to say and you might have personal feelings about it. Like sometimes it does suck to be that kid who's got a 10-letter last name. Like my last name is Lamontine. That's how I say it. But everybody always asks, how do you say it? Is it Lamontine? Do you try and say it like a French person? And because French is like well enough seen as like a different language in the world, like you can have like a Western's conception of what French culture looks like. You have an approximation of what that sounds like, even if you try to say it right, but you want to say it respectfully, so you ask the person how you say it, right? So imagine seeing a name that not only do you not know the culture from, but you don't know the context of how to say it, or even what the intonation of certain characters or accents might say. The fuck are you gonna do? Just butcher it every time? No, ask them how to say their fucking name, man.
Yeah.
It's like with Vikram. We played
For the longest
PlayStation
time
with this guy. Yeah, because like I came into the party, people were calling him Vikram.
Vikram, yeah.
Vikram or something like, and his name was actually Vikram. That's how you said his name was Vikram. And we'd always say his name wrong until
and he
just
never
one
corrected
day.
us.
Exactly, until one day someone was like, how do you say your name? And he's like, well, it's Vikram Sandhu. And we're like, whoa, we've been saying it wrong the whole fucking time. Why didn't you tell us? And he's like, well, I thought I was playing a trick on all of y'all, laughing at you for not knowing. And he wasn't even like upset that we didn't say his name right. He was like, look at these fucking idiots who can't even say my name right. I got one up on them, you know. Like he was a real good sport about it all and everything, right? And he actually kind of was like, I've been playing a trick on you. That's not really my name. Because he could have corrected us literally
at any
from
point.
day one. Actually, it's Vikram, not Vikram.
Yeah.
He could have said it for years, but didn't. And then like after 2 or 3 years of knowing the guy, he's like, "That's not how you say my fucking name." Like, wow, right?
And it's crazy because, like, you know, with I'll just say, with Colin being gone, I don't know how to pronounce his craft name. I kind of want to ask around to people that he knew and interacted with if they know the correct pronunciation, because I need it in my head. I need to hear it in my head. But the reason why his death affected me so hard is so I was actually invited to his memorial services, and Rob, who used to be our president of Pagan Pride, is the leader of our local heathen group, or speaking of pronunciation, I hear him say it all the time. Orglava, the Orglava tradition of this Pennsylvania Dutch heathenry. I had found out that Colin had recently joined Orglava, and he was, beginning to study their beliefs and traditions. And he passed, and Colin's family was very Christian flavored, and so they wanted to do not like a whole like church service kind of thing. The services were just like in a hall kind of thing, just like just in a hall. And Rob's group were like, we want to give him our traditions, funeral rites. And I didn't know that it was happening so quickly, because me and Joyce had gotten there just as they were finishing up, and I was like, wait, but it's not supposed to start until this time. So they had like shoved their funerary rites for him in the beginning, like before any services were actually really supposed to start. And we had gotten there at the end, and then I was watching as because I had kind of float in the back, because I was like, oh shit, I'm late, but I don't know how I ended up late. And I was just kind of sitting there, and I was watching everyone laugh, like make fun of what they were doing, making fun of these funerary rites. And it made me realize, I was like, people who are, even, it doesn't even matter if you're closeted, because he was not closeted to his parents about his beliefs and traditions and anything else that he ever studied. They just literally were like, no, fuck you, you're gonna have a Christian thing. But Rob's group was really adamant on doing it, which I'm glad, but also they just mocked it the whole time. And it made me realize, I was like, we have to hold space for those that pass, that don't get the proper funerary rites and memorials that they wanted for themselves and that they deserved.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something, as pagans, witches, heathens, whatever we may be, I think that's something that we have to rally together as a community to do, just even in our own local communities, and hold that space. And I think that's my big takeaway, especially with death and how it works and all this other stuff. Is just, I really feel like people deserve the memorial that they want, that they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's incredibly selfish and unfair and fucked up when we don't give it to them.
I have a lot to say on this, but it sounds like Scott does too. So I just want to let you go ahead and take that, because I've been talking a lot.
I mean, I do have to watch the time, just as a heads up. I did promise Darren that I'd pick him up from work, but I actually I started crying over here when you were explaining that, Jay. And I mean, not that Sarah's situation was at all like that. Sarah's mother was very appreciative to Rob. Sarah was studying Braucherei, the folk magic of the tradition.
Yes. Pennsylvania
so
Dutch
I don't know
heathenry,
how
yes.
I don't know how involved. I know she was. It doesn't matter. The point was, I know she was studying Braucherei, and Rob was there for her.
As far as I understand it, Rob's Braucherei teachings and the Orglava teachings kind of go hand in hand, as far as I know.
Yeah. I wasn't 100% sure, but regardless, but it made me weep for him. Just to think that someone is. I mean, I'm all for smiling at a funeral. If that is how someone needs to, if that is maybe how the person would have responded, or maybe that's just how you cope or what have you, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But to laugh at the traditions of the person,
like to mock it,
to mock it, right?
Laughing is different than mockery. That's a whole different thing,
right? Like that's I hate to say this, but on them, and I mean that with the most folk sincerity as I could possibly muster. May they also be mocked when they die. And
wow, that
Yeah.
was a curse.
Yeah,
and
I support
That
this.
was a curse.
I mean, I back it 100% because that is exactly what I did there at that funeral.
I mean, unfortunately, that's what I have to say to that. And because I do have to go, I want to talk once again directly to our listeners. I want to leave you guys with this. I know this is a heavy topic, and I want to say that all loss, all forms of death, you are allowed to go through it as you need to go through it in your time, in your way. If you smile, if you reminisce, if you feel sad or depressed or what have you, all of those are perfectly acceptable expressions of all forms of loss and death, whether that be the loss of a loved one through physical death or the unfortunate ending of an intense emotional relationship or what have you. You're allowed to move through those in your own time. Just I want to say to you, make sure that you keep moving. Never stay in it. Be with it. Accept its place. Find your path and keep moving. Because if you stay in it too long in one place while you're trying to cope with this loss, it can swallow you up. And when we keep walking, we're able to I don't know, for some people it may not feel like healing. Maybe it's a perspective, but whatever the end of the tunnel is for you, know that that's acceptable, and know that if you ever need to talk, I may not know you, but sometimes it helps just to have an ear of a stranger just to listen to. And I will sit there and I'll just let you talk at me for however long you need. Or if you want to ask me questions, I'd open my mouth if you asked. So, yeah. So I want to end with that. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening.
Can I just say how nice it is that you actually are picking up your partner from work?
No,
I was just thinking about it. Like, you can go. I don't want to hold you up, but it's just like, man, I haven't been fucking picked up from nothing in a long fucking time.
I know.
That's a level of care. That's care. Someone waiting for you to pick you up after work. You go get Darian.
Don't leave Darian hanging.
All right.
We love you. We love you, Scott.
I love you guys. Be safe.
We love
Have a good
Darian
night,
too.
right?
So tell me, said we love him. There was this meme going around on Facebook. It wasn't like a funny meme. It was like post a picture of the last thing that you did before lockdown. And like right now, like it kind of feels like we're going through this collective death in a way, a death of our society, a death of, like, I love, like, one of the things that always kept me going and motivated, I love live music. Live music, it's more than just like going to a show and having a couple beers. It's more than just that for me. Like, it is magic, it is ritual, it is
like getting tattoos for me.
Yeah, I haven't gotten tattoos yet, so maybe the feelings will be similar. But
There's something about like doing drugs and getting tattoos and going to live music shows, man. It's like a good trifecta of everything I like in life.
Yeah, there's just something about live music, and I really do love, my rock, metal, stuff like that. That is kind of my thing. Yeah, and what I love most is the vibration in your chest, right? Especially with like the drums or bass, right? It's that vibration in your chest, and it radiates throughout your entire body.
It's that
And
good feeling, that real good shit
uh-huh,
that people are always talking about in songs.
exactly. When you actually feel music, right? And I miss that. I need that. I need that in my life. I and I don't and I can't replicate it, I don't have that kind of, like, it's not the same. And so, everyone's going around posting pictures of things that they did, pre-lockdown, and I realized, I was like, this is more than just like some silly Facebook meme that's, kind of going around. Like, this is like
Wow.
healing. This is like dredging up
I just
memories, but also trying to help
I just
people
had a big
heal.
realization. Friendship happens after forgiveness. Holy fuck. You can't be friends with anybody until you've actually forgiven them. Oh my god. Wow, I can't believe this. I'm just pulling this out of nowhere. But like that's kind of what led me down this path of where I am in my life right now, is the fact that I stopped viewing myself as like this perfect person who
Mm-hmm.
doesn't cause harm, who doesn't do all these things. I understand exactly how fucked up I am. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that I'm lonely right now is because when I hurt, I have mechanisms that push other people away and put up fucking walls to keep people from coming in and make me really intense so that everybody else is, well, holy fuck, let's just like set up boundaries and just stay the fuck out and not upset her, right?
Right.
And then suddenly I'm lonely and I'm wondering why, when it's a reaction to what's going on, right? But true friendship, the kind that like nourishes us, just like live music, it happens at forgiveness, right? Like I was thinking about it right now. I'm like, what makes us, you and I, Jay, able to have these deep conversations, right? And it's because there's no judgment, right?
Yeah,
I know at the end
honestly.
of the day, if you want to tell me, listen, I think you're being a bit of a prick, you can just pull me aside and do it. And we've
Mm-hmm.
had those conversations. And
Yeah.
and that's not ground that we're unwilling to tread up in the future. Like if I'm being a prick in the future, I certainly would expect you to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with you, right? Like if like you were hurting me, I absolutely would tell you. Um and we have hurt each other. We've had
Yeah.
fights. Like 2019 was a shitty fucking year for us after like the death of Katie's dad, and how
Yeah.
that affected the podcast and how everything was going around. Like I was thinking about it, there's a lot of ways this could have gone down, right? The
Mm-hmm.
podcast could have split off and something truly magical happened. And it wasn't because like we let conflict rip us apart. It's because we chose to exist with that conflict having been there.
Right.
We didn't like
Exactly.
look for this thing that was like perfect, because perfect doesn't actually even exist. And if you're constantly looking for perfect, you're just going to throw away a lot of really fucking good people who just are hurting too. So like we forgave each other and sat and like built a relationship out of it. And that's why like we can sit and have these conversations about the absolute hardest things in the world. Like I can sit and talk to you about my grandparents dying, like my childhood trauma, like all of it, and it's not like too much to talk about, and it doesn't feel like I'm putting a weight on you either. It's like
Mm-hmm.
hacky sack. We're passing it back and forth because it's like conversational points, right? And we understand each other as a human being because we've seen like the nastiness that really sits in the heart of us all, like that unsatisfied child who constantly like feels unloved because your mother didn't pick you up from swimming practice, or they weren't there for your taekwondo black belt grading, or whatever happened that made you feel unloved by the people who was truly supposed to be there for you. And like whatever that ripple was that happened in your life, it kind of like radiates out onto your adult life. And we're all just like reliving these traumas with each other sometimes, and it's like you have to have braveness to hold that space with another human being to talk about like what you've been through and what I've been through, and to try and find like some way forward for people who are fucked up, because as long as we keep playing this game of like social justice purity and call out ivory tower activism, we're fucking killing ourselves and we're killing each other, right? And
because we've seen so many like groups split over infight. Like you have a group that forms out of the idea of one good thing, and then because one was holier than thou, I mean, and they just split, and then now they're fighting for the same cause, but now they're fighting against each other, but for the same cause.
And I'm bad for this too. Sometimes I'm the person to instigate a split, and sometimes a split does have to happen too. Sometimes you have things that are like pulling in just opposite fucking directions that can't stay together, right? Sometimes I am that bitch that comes in and rips the flag right down the middle and says, y'all can fucking hang out in different areas because this isn't working anymore. But sometimes like something really beautiful happens if you can persist. And I'm not saying like put up with an abusive situation, but you just know that like no situation's truly perfect, right? And like I've caused you harm, you've caused me harm, and harm is like such an abstract thing even to talk about, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
that we could do a whole episode. That would actually be a kind of a good idea for an
harm and violence. Yeah, we should. I really want to like take our podcast to the next level of like. We're hitting some really big questions and territory now of like what is harm, what is violence, like what does accountability in a post colonial life look like? And I know I just threw a lot of really big words out there, but
I'll grab this. I'll grab all of that when I go to edit this. I'll just jot that down.
Accountability in a post-colonial landscape.
I'll be like, yep, there you go. That's what's going on the sheet.
It sounds nice on paper. Yeah, let's do that. The Ivory Tower academics will certainly like those words. That will get me the good hashtag. That will get me into the correct ballroom parties, or backyard fire pits. Those are the ones I want to be at.
As unpolished as our conversations are, I think
they're gold, though.
They are gold, for one, but two, I think academics would actually enjoy our podcast because it lets them let their hair down. I think they would. I think
Okay,
I think because it lets them let their hair down and just listen to people be people.
Okay, I was gonna say, tell me your take. I really want you to sell me on this, but I can get that. Yeah, I think that really comes down then to the individual of the academic, because like, man, most academics I met are like looking for a fight.
Oh yeah,
they're like looking for an intellectual cock battle of like to prove their superiority of somebody, of I have mastered the Shakespeare and I shall doth thwart thee,
Nah, fortunately for me, I will say most academics that I have come across are actually just pretty chill. They're like people like us, but with more motivation.
I think it depends on the academic, right? Like if you have
some are snotty as hell though, so
I think what it actually always comes down to is the individual person, right? Because you can go into school and literally be the person who just studies how to make a fucking rocket and makes a fucking rocket, or you can be the person who goes and starts thinking that you understand how the universe works and that it's your place to go out, like challenge other individuals on their personal beliefs about like what they think on how the world works, right? And that's none of your fucking business, right? Like if you want to go to school to learn how to build a goddamn rocket, that's really cool by me, and I think you should really build that. Or like nanobots in the blood, or sustainable economics is shit, sustainable land, I don't even want to say development. Yeah, sustainable land stewardship practices. Yeah, protect the
Maybe.
land.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say. I don't even know if school could teach you that sort of thing, because like, what's colonialism going to teach you about the land that the
Right.
land doesn't already fucking know? Leave it alone. It's fine.
What's school gonna teach you about colonialism? They're just gonna put on Pocahontas and call it a day.
Oh God,
That's
no,
what they're
they
gonna
will.
do. Here,
Don't even
watch Pocahontas. That'll teach you. I do
don't even get me
think.
fucking started though. You're like, yeah, I do think we got to wrap up this episode at
Yes,
some point, because
we
this
do
is
have
just
to
like
wrap up at
Sophia
some
rants
point.
for 4 hours.
But anyway,
Can
like
be.
I said, I think it could be, and like I did say earlier in the episode, send us your rants. I'll just collect them over an unknown amount of time, and I'll just put something together.
I will like vouch for you on this here.
Email them to us.
Like,
That's probably
I'll
easier.
say this. As somebody who like really very much does not have editing skills or know-how to do fuck all to put my voice into digital space, people like Jay, who have enough time and energy and love to put up with our bullshit, to sit over hours and hours of this crap every fucking week and edit it out and be like, here you go, this sounds great. And then it becomes a really just digestible, good podcast. Y'all are like true fucking alchemists. You take my lead and shit it out into like solid gold bricks, and I'm like, man, this is neat. So don't pass this opportunity up. If you want to like say some cool stuff that might affect somebody else's life, and like have other weirdos message you on the internet and be like, wow, you affected me in a way that I didn't expect. Here's intimate details about my personal life. Well, maybe you should send us a rant so that you can have your voice on here and have the ramifications of being a podcaster thrust directly into your life.
Exactly what Sophia said. So yeah, if you do want to send us your rant clips, I think just like email them to us. That's the easiest way for me to organize it all. It's easy. It's witchesbetwixt@gmail.com. Just send them there, and I'll start to sift through them. But yes, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. Scott had to skate out a little bit early to go pick up Darian from work.
We love you all.
We do love you all.
Don't summon anything that you really need to banish. Just like stop doing stuff like that. It's not a good idea. Just don't. Just hug each other, for fuck's sake.
Wrap up your wands. Practice safe magic.
Say hi to a cat. Go tell your mom, or maybe not your mom if she was shit to you. Go tell someone who you love that you love them. If you don't love someone, fucking hug yourself, eat some toast, drink some water, give some change to a homeless person, and have a good fucking evening. I love you all. If somebody else doesn't, if you don't have someone to say I love you to, well, I'm going to say it to you. I love you specifically, there, individual person in the corner who has been me in the past before. I see you. You're brilliant. You're loved. Don't give up. Fucking, we can be happy too. Just learn to enjoy your own company.
You can find Witches Betwixt on the big three social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is Witches Betwixt, all one word, on all three platforms. We all check each one, except Twitter, which is exclusively run by me, Jay, but feel free to message us on any of them, and we'll get back to you. If you want to add your post to our online community, use the hashtag WBTWXT.